All right. Well, we've got the room filling up, and so I want to welcome everyone to this week's Wednesday webinar. My name is Craig Brown. I serve our annual conference as the Executive Director of Congregational Development, and it is good to be with you on another Wednesday afternoon. I am so thankful that you've taken time out of your busy ministry schedule, either as a layperson or as a clergy person, to be a part of this time. We live in hectic times, and the demand on our time is extreme. And so the willingness to take this time to carve it out, to say, yes, I want to be a part of this experience, to learn and grow and experience Christian community in a new way, is something that is to be applauded. So thank you for making the time. We just are so glad you're here, and so glad the Wednesday webinar is helpful to you in your ministry. Today's Wednesday webinar is going to take a little different shape than any of the Wednesday webinars you may have been a part of before, and you may have noticed that when you came into this Zoom meeting today. Rather than being in the Zoom webinar interface, we are in the regular Zoom room interface, which is probably the one most of you are familiar with. And so in the Zoom room interface, of course, there's a chat button. You can press the chat, and over on the right, you can enter a chat. And if that little pop-up menu near where you type in the chat window says everyone, that means what you type is going to be seen by everyone. If you want to chat specifically with an individual, you would click that menu and you could see their name and send a message directly to them. So there's going to be an opportunity for you to put questions in the chat feature later, and so we'll invite you to utilize that. If you want to pose a question everybody should see, then just let it say everyone and you'll ask your question. If you want just our presenters to see your question, you can send it to them directly by selecting their name on that pop-up window. This Wednesday webinar is being recorded, as all of them are, and you can find all of our Wednesday webinars on the conference website by typing in cnumc.org. And as you enter the main page of the conference website to the right, you'll see there a list of large graphic buttons. And the top one is the bishop's greeting and message, and right below that, you'll see a button that says Wednesday webinar. If you click that button, you'll see a listing of all the Wednesday webinars we've had so far. You can click on any one of the Wednesday webinars, and there you'll be able to find a recording of it. So if you weren't able to see a webinar, you can go back and watch one. And if the presenters had any material that they distributed, a PowerPoint or handouts, you'll also find links to those there as well. So the reason our interface today is different while we're using the regular Zoom room interface is because we're going to be utilizing a feature today called Breakout Rooms. And we're going to be moving back and forth from this main meeting room in Zoom to breakout rooms, where you'll be in a room with 3 or 4, maybe as many as 5 people in conversation together. Now, I want to tell you that when you go into those breakout rooms, you're going to have a very short amount of time to address some questions that are going to be posed to you. And so there really won't be a whole lot of time in those breakout rooms for you to introduce yourself at length. You'll basically be able to, in response to the question, say who you are, where you're from, and then engage in responding to the question that's been put to you. You'll only have about 5 minutes or so in the breakout rooms, and you're going to go to those rooms several times during this webinar. So just be prepared for the pace to be a little different today. Instead of listening to presentation for 30 or 40 minutes, we're going to be hearing some presentation, going to a breakout room, coming back for some more presentation, going back to a breakout room, and kind of following this rhythm back and forth as we move through the webinar. Our hope is that this experience for you will be one that is going to really be enriching, because not only will you be able to receive some content, you'll also be able to reflect and consider what it means and how you're understanding it in your own life and context. And so this webinar is going to look a little different than our other webinars, and we're excited about that and excited about the opportunity to share this one with you. We want to welcome our 2 presenters today, the co-pastors of The Table at Central United Methodist Church in Sacramento, Linda Duhirsu and Matt Smith. As you know, The Table at Central UMC is a church that was planted there about 10 years ago. And in the life of our annual conference, it's been one of the more successful church plants that we have had. And it has done so primarily, well, for a lot of reasons, but one of which that I see quite clearly is that The Table has such a clear sense of what a faith formation process looks like for individuals. And that's what we're focused on today, is how can faith formation happen? How can it become a part of who we are, even in the midst of a pandemic when our buildings and our facilities are closed and we're using mediums such as this to interact with each other? So I'm excited for the leadership that Matt and Linda are going to bring to our conversation today. And so I'm going to turn things over to them to let them facilitate and lead us through this time. So let's all give a round of virtual applause, and congratulations to Matt and Linda. We're very glad you're here with us today and looking forward to our time with you. So take it away.
Thanks, Craig. We appreciate the opportunity to be here and to share in this kind of different format that we're going to try on together today. We have never done it quite like this. And first, I want to say we're grateful to Tua and to the team of folks who are figuring out the technology to kind of support this. Zoom is it is the main platform we're using with all of our online faith formation groups that we call kitchen tables. This started with a conversation Craig and Linda and I shared in together a couple weeks back. And the invitation was around helping people think through how to shape online small groups. And in that process, we realized that we needed to turn that, or we discerned that we wanted to turn the webinar format inside out. And so instead of presenting for 45 minutes, we're going to kind of move back and forth into some of those breakout groups. And our hope is that we're going to introduce a book that Linda and I have written together. It's called Growing in Faith. And this is the resource. It's a 6-chapter book that we wrote together with a grant a few years ago. This is the resource that we use to welcome newcomers into our faith formation process at the table, which is in East Sacramento, not far from Sacramento State. And so this is the way that we watch over each other in love in our community. We were actually teaching a Growing in Faith group with 8 people when we all went into shelter in place. And so we finished that one online. And then we moved from that into, because so many new people were coming in through online worship, looking for structure amidst all of this uncertainty, we started to offer this online. And so I'm going to try to share a screen. We'll see if this will work as I do it, and we'll kind of move in this together, I hope, if this works. So we started to move together with, we had actually 28 people that went through our first online gathering of Growing in Faith. And as we moved in that space together, we started to learn about how this structure can be so helpful to people who are just looking for ways to connect with others. We've moved that group of 28 through our first 6-week series and into what we call kitchen tables. And we're in the midst now of a group of 9, and then starting another group on Tuesday with 10 more people. At the end of this time, we're going to invite you to consider joining us in a 6-week series that is kind of an iteration of this that we're calling Growing in Faith for Pastors in Pandemic. And it'll start this coming Tuesday at 2 p.m. California time. It'll run for 6 weeks, and we'll share a little bit more. We hope during our hour together with you all, we want to invite everyone to wonder about how our Wesleyan tradition might guide us in creating spiritually formative spaces amidst this time of pandemic. We also want to challenge each other to consider creatively imagining doing so, using and drawing on our Wesleyan tradition in this way. And then finally, we want to invite you into that Growing in Faith for Pastors in Pandemic, if that is something, or some other process that would help you clarify in your unique ministry setting what a faith formation process might look like. So that's our hope. And I'm going to turn it over to Linda.
Thanks, Matt. Just like all of you, I'm assuming, this is our first pandemic. And while it is impacting us all differently, with the most vulnerable and the most marginalized taking on, of course, the largest burden, it's also true that we are all experiencing this pandemic at the same time, right? So when those things happen for me and some of you, it's very hard for me to see all these names and not greet you all personally, and y'all know who you are, and it's kind of killing me. Amelia Chua, I saw your name on there. So that's amazing. And hello, Heather Hammer. So I'm gonna say that I'm going to focus now and say music helps me to focus really and to process things. It helps me more than anything. And we shared a song in worship a few weeks ago that really can say all of what I want to say better. than I can. It's a song called The New Country. Maybe you've heard it. It was written last year by Amanda Cook. And Amanda found herself letting go of old ways of being and moving into a new space. This version that we recorded was shared in worship last Sunday. And the vocalist is a woman named Gal Bang Williams. She is a professor of vocal jazz at Sac State, and she's a Hmong refugee. And her version of this song is very multivalent. And her own journey is literally from an old country to a new country, the United States. Gal and her family were forced to leave a great deal behind. So we would like to share this question with you. Just as you listen to a short clip, we invite you to reflect. What is the most painful right now for you to leave behind as you engage ministry amidst pandemic? And what is feeling most frightening to you as you consider pastoring in this new country of pandemic? You don't have to memorize that. We'll give it to you again. So we'd like to share this with you.
I want to love with nothing to gain. I've heard my beloved calling my name, invited until death, till all that I have left is everything I need, and I begin to breathe, invited until death, till all that I have left is everything I need, and I begin to breathe in the new country.
Thanks for watching that. So our time is going to now move back and forth from where you are now in this large session into breakout groups. And that will be 3 to 5 people. I'm not in charge of that part, are going to be with you in your breakout room. We want you to mute your mic when you get to that room. We will provide the prompt for each breakout, and you'll be with different people each time, just so you know. Each breakout, please start with taking a breath, just even 30 seconds, and be silent. And then the first person, when he or she is ready to share, unmute yourself and do so. And then it's mutual invitation. Read the name of another person in the square box. Everyone's names are usually there, so that we don't talk over each other. You'll have about 4 minutes. If you finish early, please just let the silence be a gift, and we'll bring everybody back at the same time. And it might be a little bit bumpy, but we want to try it. And finally, we hold a few guidelines at the table, and we invite you to embrace these guidelines as well. So first, there is no cross-talking. So please, that means don't talk over anyone else. Don't offer any guidance or wisdom. Don't ask questions or solve. And secondly, the stories of others are their stories to share. And we practice confidentiality in all of our sharing. So your breakout rooms, as I understand it, are not being videotaped. All right. So the prompt is, what is most painful for you to leave behind as you engage ministry amidst pandemic? And what feels most frightening to you as you consider pastoring in this time of pandemic? And we'll see you back here shortly. Our tradition, our Wesleyan tradition, might guide us in creating spiritually formative spaces amidst this pandemic. We have a clip from another song we shared in online worship with the table a few weeks ago. It's called Pilot Me. You get that? Pilot Me, How Do I Find My Way? By Josh Garrels. And after you see it, you're going to move again, hopefully successfully, into new breakouts. And the invitation is, are you able to state clearly in just a few words the faith formation process, which is the heart of your church's community life together, okay? And if you are able to do that, share it. If not, what then is one thing you believe is essential from our Wesleyan tradition for the faith formation process you might be called to develop in the midst of this pandemic? So we're going to share a song clip with you again.
I will rise and follow you over. Savior, please, pilot me.
That's Hannah. So again, we are going to send you into your breakout groups, just remind you about no crosstalk, assuming that you get there, and honoring people's stories. And the question is, are you able to state clearly in a few words the faith formation process, which is at the heart of your church community's life together? If so, please share that. And if not, what is one thing you believe is essential from our Wesleyan tradition for the faith formation process you might be called to develop amidst this time of pandemic? And we hope to see you right back.
Welcome back, everyone. Thank you for staying with it, for your persistence. Nevertheless, we are grateful for you taking some time to try to reflect together on what faith formation looks like in your unique ministry setting, or what your hopes might be rooted in our Wesleyan tradition. At the table in our ministry setting, we gather for 90 minutes each week with folks in 21st century class meetings we call kitchen tables. And Growing in Faith shares or invites people into the language. One of the key ways that we access that question of how it is with your soul, we have a lot of people who are new to church, or who have been burned by church, or who have been bored by church, and they're coming back after some time away. And so the primary question we use to help people into how is it with your soul are the 3 simple rules that Wesley shared, or the way we think about it, holding our life in conversation with the Great Commandment. How are we loving God? How are we loving our neighbors? By trying to do no harm and to do all of the good that we can. So Linda's going to share just a little bit, and then we'll move into a question that we'll try again in breakout groups.
So knowing that many of you have practiced and led class meeting type gatherings already, we want to give us all an opportunity to practice doing that together. So our time's going to be brief as you're starting to figure out. So we want you to consider the question like this. How is it with your soul in terms of a word or an image or a metaphor that illustrates the state of your soul right now? Okay. And we're going to move into that in just a moment. I've already reminded you about our guidelines, and we're going to share one more clip with everyone. This is a song that you may think you know farther along, but this is a version of it from Josh Garrels via our music team. So listen to this as you consider how it is with your soul, and a word or an image or a metaphor that can illustrate that in just a few words.
farther along the way, know all about farther along the way, understand why. So cheer up, my sisters, even the sunshine will understand it all by and by. Oh, yeah.
Mm. That was Omari Tao. So we're going to say goodbye again as you go into your breakout rooms, asking, how is it with your soul?
Thank you. Welcome back. Again, if you're joining us new, my name is Matt, and along with Linda, we serve as the co-pastors of a United Methodist Church in East Sacramento called The Table. We want to invite you, we're going to close here in just a couple minutes and then move into some questions. And so as you have those on the bottom of your screen, you'll see a chat feature. If you have questions for me or for Linda or for one another that you'd just like to brainstorm, we would invite you to send those questions directly to Craig Brown. So instead of to everyone, just click that down there, and hopefully the questions can go to Craig and he can field those as we go. So Linda.
Our final chapter, chapter 6, and our final week of the 6 weeks invites everyone to consider being baptized or renewing their baptismal covenant, and then encourages them to make what we call a deep commitment to God and to our community of faith. And we are doing, in so doing, I guess, we hope everyone's next step, once they consider that, will be to join a weekly class meeting, and we call those our kitchen table.
And so today we want to invite you to consider joining us for a 6-week journey that will be an iteration of just that, of growing in faith for pastors in pandemic. So our 6-week time together will be rooted in this Wesleyan reflection on how to welcome newcomers into Christian community through the method in Methodism. And we will introduce what that looks like at the table, not because we think this is a one-size-fits-all process that everyone can utilize, but in hopes that together over a 6-week journey, we might discern some creative ways to implement this in all of the diverse ministry settings that are spread throughout our annual conference. And we know we also have some Sierra Service Project staff on here today. So hopefully ways that Sierra Service Project might also wonder about what online gatherings look like for young people this summer. So as you think about those questions, Craig is going to kind of take over from here with those. And to do that, we're going to well, one, we want to invite you just to go on our website, thetable.umc.org. If you want to join that 6-week series, you can look down scroll down to the bottom on the left side, and you'll see a link there to sign up for that. As you have questions that you want to share right now, you can do so in the chat. We're going to play just one final clip. This is another clip from worship. This is our sending out song in worship last Sunday at the table. And this is Omari again singing with an artist that's new to us. Her name is Liz. And just invite you to hear a moment of this music as you reflect on whatever questions you might have or where the Spirit might be leading you as you discern spiritual formation in your unique setting. So here are our music team again.
Ooh, love something like a floorboard. Love give me a little more. We're gonna love like there's no tomorrow. We're gonna love like there's no tomorrow. We gonna love like there's no love like there's no tomorrow. Sing that. We're gonna love, love, love. Oh my. Love for my brother. Love for my sister. Love past the color. Love for the nation. Love on every occasion. We're gonna love, love, love.
Mm.
Amen. We're going to turn over
Amen.
and then see if there are questions that people might have that we could work on together.
Yeah, there are some questions. Just kind of sitting in that moment for a second is good. All right. Some of what I put in the chat window for everyone is a link that will take you directly to the website at the table, where if you want to sign up for the 6-week Growing in Faith, you just click that link. It'll open your web browser and take you directly to the page where you can sign up. So one of the questions people have is about the book. And so what I want to tell everybody is that as part of participating in the 6-week class, the book is going to be furnished to you in order to participate, and that's going to be happening through the annual conference. So we're going to be furnishing the book. So the table will figure out the nuts and bolts of getting you the book, but we're going to take care of the cost of the book because we really want people to engage in this process. So how the book gets paid for, I just answered that. How do people get the book is the question.
It will come in the mail, and if once you register for it, you put your address in there and we will mail it to you. What we need to tell you is we start next week. So if you would like to be part of this, you need to register today, really. You can do it by tomorrow morning, but that means however many folks register, then we'll get the books in the mail tomorrow. And then you should hopefully have them by Saturday.
That's great. Thank you for answering that. All right. So, I'm looking at a text message. Sorry. Here's a couple more questions. So, how is this going for you in leading these groups online? What's it been like for your table groups? What's it look like for them to do this?
It's going really well. I think they have found their way online, and we are managing it, and we are doing, each table group has a facilitator, 2 facilitators. We've had our first, we do trainings for our facilitators like 4 times a year. And our second one will be this Saturday, in which we're just bringing the leaders together to ask just that question, and they're feeling really strong and great about it. And honestly, attendance is better than it was pre-pandemic.
Okay. So a question that is very much like what we just asked, but it focuses on leaders. So what has worked for you in recruiting leaders for your kitchen table groups?
Go ahead, Matt.
One of the things I would say is that because Linda and I co-lead this 6-week journey through Growing in Faith, we get to develop relationships with each and every person. At least at this moment in the life of our church community, we get to develop those relationships. So hand people off to kitchen tables, we're beginning to see some of the gifts and graces that people might have for facilitating or leading those. And then they're always practicing life together in a kitchen table. And then kitchen table leaders are discerning who among their groups might be called to lead. And then it's always through a personal invitation and ask. And we try to have all of our kitchen tables co-led with 2 people.
Right.
All right, terrific. One of the questions that was asked is, what are the, just repeat for everyone, the 3 questions that you discuss in your kitchen table groups?
The main question is, how is it with your soul? And the way we answer it is, over the last week, how have you been doing good? Where do you believe you have done harm, or where have you tried to avoid doing harm? And how is it that you're practicing spiritual disciplines to stay in love with God?
All right, terrific. Let's see, scrolling down here. So you talked a little bit about how the kitchen table is modeled after kind of the historic class meeting. And so someone's asking about covenant discipleship groups. And so I think the quick answer to that, and I'd love to hear you expand on that, is that in some ways we're talking about the same thing, kind of these non-curricular discipleship groups where covenant discipleship is a lot like the class meeting, a lot like what you're doing in the kitchen table. Would that be correct, or is that not a good read on that?
No, I think that's really fair. Like instead of an information-driven model, this is a formation-driven model to help us try to give voice to where we're experiencing God in our lives.
Okay, great. So one of our pastors is asking, kind of how do you handle the protocol for people being baptized? You get to the end and then there's this invitation for baptism or the renewal or the reaffirmation of the baptismal covenant. What's the protocol that you have for that?
Go ahead, Matt.
We have come to our custom that we've come to at the table is to celebrate baptism twice a year in the fall at the end of a 5-week worship series that we do, inviting everyone to make deep commitments. So each year we invite individuals and families to recommit to God in our community. That culminates in a celebration, a renewal of baptism for those of us who've been baptized, and then a celebration of baptism for those who are longing to experience that next step, who've never been baptized and are ready to come to the waters in that way. And there are classes that Linda we needed to add another time. So we do that now at Easter sunrise. We have done that at Easter sunrise because we couldn't be together. A number of people will be baptized when we come back together for in-person worship again, whenever that happens to be.
One of the questions that's popping up a lot with people in a kitchen table group, what would be like the maximum?
Our kitchen tables are 6 to 8. Optimum really is 6, honestly, for an hour and a half. When it goes beyond that, we either we start another group, but our groups are 6 to 8 people, and we're very clear about that, I guess is what I want to say. They're not bigger than that.
All right, that's a good answer, and in keeping with the historic class meeting too, 6 to 8. So that's exciting to hear. Now, one of the other questions that is being posed here, and it's a good question that I want us to focus on for a little bit. As you think about your kitchen tables, how long do they last? How do they live out a life cycle over time? What's that look like?
So I love that question. So our kitchen tables are very organic. They begin and end at all times during the year. And when I say begin and end, what I really mean is each person decides and knows, we trust, when their time is to enter a kitchen table and when their time is to leave one. What we do as facilitators of our kitchen tables is we call it pulse taking. So every 3 or 4 months, we invite our kitchen table leaders to have a questioning time in the group that says, is this still a time that is relevant for you? Are you still able to feel like this is where you want to be? If not, then maybe it's time to step away. Maybe you're ready to start a new kitchen table, or maybe we'll just keep doing what we're doing. In that way, people come and people go. Over time, what has developed is that the time of our kitchen tables, we have them, it's easier to say when we don't have them on Friday and Saturday. That's what's easier to say so far. But the times are fairly consistent, but the people come in and out, if that makes sense. So does that make sense?
Terrific. So talk about the groupings. I mean, do you group by, are the groups gathered across generations, across different affinities, or do you try to align them around a certain affinity?
We do not align around a certain affinity except for one, which I'll tell you about, 2 right now. So the main reason people join a certain kitchen table is that's when they're free. That's when they can commit to showing up. So they are intergenerational, and that's really the main thing. We have one group that is a silent group, and they have questions during the week, and they come together and they sit in silence and they journal, and then once a month they share a meal together. Because those folks who choose that talk a lot during their work lives, and they need some silence. And then most currently, we have a kitchen table of more age demographic of young professional people. That's new. So just because we don't have them doesn't mean we won't. And we try to keep this as a very organic process. A lot of times we say in our Growing in Faith group, the kitchen table that you want to join a year from now isn't here yet because you're not leading it. So.
And I would just say, Craig, too, while most of our kitchen tables are super eclectic, one of the questions Jolo was asking is around, are people in the same household in groups? And we invite family members to discern that together. It turns out when you're talking how it is with your soul and whether you're doing good or doing harm, you're often talking about the people that you're in closest proximity to. And so most of our family members go to different kitchen tables on the same night. They're not in the same one. There are times when either couples or even parent-child might be in a kitchen table together, but it's certainly not the norm for us. And then I think also just the continual influx of people keeps the groups evolving and changing organically over time as well.
So the question I have for you, we touched on it earlier, is now that all of your kitchen tables are really forced into a digital and online format, how has that proven to be a new opportunity for them? So I don't want you to focus on what the problem of that has been. How's that become a new opportunity?
Yeah, it doesn't, honestly. I mean, there are obviously the problems around pandemic, but for our kitchen tables, it's created, I would say, a heightened sense of intimacy. I think there is a way in which people who often feel so isolated through this process of physical distancing to reconnect and reconvene with people, not just over meetings over Zoom, but how is it with your soul? I think what we know is that people who had drifted from kitchen tables are finding their way back into kitchen tables. And we have the largest number of people in Growing in Faith over these last 2 months than we've had over any 2-month time period in our 9.5-year history as a community of faith.
All right, we're going to leave it there as that was our last question. I know others have some questions. I think I wouldn't be overstepping boundaries for me to invite you to drop an email to Pastor Linda or Pastor Matt at the table. If you have something specific you want to know about, they can try to respond to you and keep you engaged. I will only tell you from my personal experience that churches that have clarity about their faith formation process, and churches that have the capacity to invite people into a transformational experience, not an informational one, a transformational one, those churches experience a deep, deep sense of vitality and hopefulness as they live life together in Christ. And so this is one model that's being used at the table that is really life-giving and has really helped this community start as a church plant 10 years ago to grow to a community now that gathers 200-300 people on a regular basis. It's a remarkable story. And so what I would say is that we find the story repeated in many other places across our land that engage in this type of faith formation process. So with that said, I want to turn things over to Selby Ewing, our Director of Communication. She's got a couple quick announcements to give us, and then I'll be back to tell you what's up for next week. For right now, let's all give a round of virtual Thanksgiving to Pastors Matt and Linda for their work. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You both are a blessing, and we're glad that you have been with us today. Thank you. Thank you so much for the time, effort, and energy you have put in to today. It is valued and appreciated. Thank you so much. All right, Selby, where are you?
I'm right here.
There she is. We can
me?
hear you fine. We cannot see you, but we can hear you, so fire away.
Okay, I'm one of the squares, and that's a great spot to be. I just want to thank everybody for joining us for Wednesday webinars and remind everyone that this is one of 3 weekly offerings from communications in the conference. On Tuesdays, we post reflections around the coming lectionary passages for Sunday. So a little spiritual growth there. Wednesday webinar, of course, you're experiencing skills, tips, and tricks for ministry and beyond. And then, of course, our newsletter comes out on Thursday, the Instant Connection. And we really want your stories. This is a plug for you to think about what's going on in your local church, who in your local church might have an interesting story, what's going on, what are the successes, what are the challenges, and share. We're not looking for, we saved the world stories. We're looking for more like somebody had a good idea and we tried it and it was really fun and it worked stories. So really wondering how the life of the local church works itself out among community. And I'm most interested in exploring that and shining a light on that. So please send me your stories. And you can send them to me directly, or there's a form on the website to submit. But I'm listed in the staff and my email's there. So just send it on to me and I'll take care of it from there. Thank you very much for joining us. And I'll turn it right back to Craig.
All right, everyone. Again, thanks for joining us on the Wednesday webinar. We had over 100 people join us today for this time together, learning about faith formation at the table at Central UMC here in Sacramento. Looking forward to next week. We're going to have our Director of Disaster Response, Sonia Ed Bennett, with us next week. She's going to be talking not about disaster response, but about disaster preparedness. And this is an important topic for us because as the pandemic hit and the shelter-in-place order took hold, a lot of us were scrambling quickly to try to get online worship together and a lot of things to happen. And so what we experienced perhaps was an awareness that we could have been even more well prepared for a reality like that coming into our midst. And so next week, we're going to talk about some of the best practices that we need to go through to be the best neighbors and to be the best type of neighbor in our community, how we can prepare and be ready for things that shift and change very, very quickly on us, like a disaster, or like some kind of crisis such as we've had. So we're looking forward to hearing from Sonia Ed Bennett next week, and are really going to appreciate the input she has. Again, our thanks to Pastors Matt and Linda, co-pastors at the table at Central UMC in Sacramento. We are again thankful for their ministry and witness in our midst. And we will see all of you next Wednesday. God bless all of you and be well on this Memorial Day weekend. Bye-bye.